welcome to the Reviving Malaysia Tourism Virtual Summit 2021. So let's start with our first session today, and the topic is positioning Malaysia moving forward. Allow me to introduce our panel of speakers. From Tourism Malaysia, yang berbahagia Datuk Haji Zainuddin Abdul Wahab, Deputy Director General for Planning. And we'd also like to welcome Mr. Yap Lip Seng, the CEO of the Malaysian Association of Hotels, which acts as the voice of the industry, working as one body to promote, protect, represent, and advance the interests of its members. Mr. Yap has been in hospitality for over 20 years. He was appointed into the Industry Advisory Panel for Taylor's University, Berjaya University College, and INTI International University and College, and is a member of various industry panels for the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture Malaysia, or MOTAC. He was recently appointed by the Human Resources Development Fund under the Ministry of Human Resources as the chairman for Sectorial Training Committee under Hospitality. The next member of the panel is Mr. Nigel Wong, the Honorary Secretary General of the Malaysian Association of Tours and Travel Agents, or better known as MATA, the national umbrella representative body for the entire travel industry in the country, working closely with the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, as well as Malaysia Tourism Promotion Board, help organize fairs, seminars, convention and workshops, both to create public awareness of the tourism industry as well as to benefit its members. Mr. Nigel Wong owns the travel portal Big Blue Holidays that offers a wide range of exciting experiences that cater to the young and the young at heart, be it adventurous or leisurely. And the session is hosted by Jennifer Ong, and your moderator is Frida Liu.
Thank you, Dr. Yasmin. Welcome to the Reviving Malaysia Tourism Virtual Summit 2021 by Hospitality Asia Channel. I'm Jennifer Ong.
And I'm Frida Liu. So our topic for the Tourism Malaysia Industry Leaders segment is positioning Malaysia moving forward. 2020 was meant to put Malaysia on the global tourism map with the ambitious Visit Malaysia 2020 campaign, which the country was expecting around 30 million international tourist arrivals and revenues of a solid 100 billion ringgit to the national coffers. Unfortunately, the coronavirus entered our world and forced our country and many other countries into a lockdown in March last year. Malaysia recorded a massive drop of 83.4% in tourist arrivals in 2020, according to the STARS report in March 2021. In June 2020, when COVID-19 was successfully managed and was well under control, the government lifted the interstate travel ban and allowed the domestic tourism sector to resume operations. Tourism authorities and industry players were relieved and welcomed the reopening, only to see it shut again towards the end of the year. Many hotels nationwide enjoyed higher occupancy rates between June and September 2020 after RMCO was imposed nationwide and interstate travel was permitted. The focus on domestic tourism is not only to revive the tourism industry, but also to market the country as a safe holiday destination, even though the Visit Malaysia 2020 campaign has been cancelled. So joining us this afternoon is YB Dato' Haji Zainuddin from Tourism Malaysia, Mr. Yap Lip Seng from MAH, and Mr. Nigel Wong from MATA to talk about what are the recovery plans for Malaysia's tourism industry. And we want to see this in our horizon very soon. I'm going to ask the first question to Dato'. 2021 is meant to be the year to revive our country's economy through domestic tourism. We had the Cuti Cuti Malaysia initiative, and Malaysians are encouraged to travel locally. However, with the continuous interstate travel ban, how can domestic tourism help Malaysia's travel sector to recover?
Okay, thank you, Berda. As we are aware that during the RMCO, and it is similar to during the COVID-19 faced by other countries. Whether we like it or not, tourism, we rely on the domestic to revive and to survive, especially to help the industry players, especially on the hotel, tour operators, and also the tourism product offer. First, I would like to say that what we have to do is now is everybody have to work together to ensure that we are not go back to the red zone. Right. As we aware that the governments now under the RMCO, we are allowed to travel within the state, green to green, with exception that we cannot cross the red zone. So I hope that this is an opportunity, an offer to the people to travel within the state or inter-district and to the state that within the green area. And examples like people who stay in Perak, for example, they still can travel. People stay in Ipoh, they can travel to Pangkor to enjoy the facilities in Pangkor. And another area that we are hoping that is, we can see that especially in a hotelier, they are embarking the new norm of the offering a staycation. We call it staycation. That I understand that it's become a very popular. Congratulations to the hotelier, especially in Klang Valley, that are very active in promoting the staycation to stay afloat. Of course, in terms of the yield, you will not getting as much as we are free to travel, but it at least help the industry or the hotelier to generate an income. And we can see also during this Ramadan, for example, that the Ramadan buffet is quite received a very good response from the visitors, and this is one of the way for us to encourage the local to travel within the means that allowed by the restriction that we are facing through.
Okay. Gentlemen, anything to add to that? I know I've never seen so much of Selangor. I visited so much of Selangor, okay.
I think what Dato' brought up about the staycations is partly true and partly a huge challenge as well. We are looking at staycations within the states where the source market is.
Right.
Klang Valley is doing well because those who want to travel, the pent-up demand is all in Klang Valley.
Right.
They cannot travel out of Klang Valley. That's why these staycations works. But then in certain areas, like even in Ipoh by itself, or in Perak by itself, or even in Kelantan, Terengganu by itself, who's going to travel within Terengganu itself? Who's going to travel within Kelantan itself? So there's a plus and minus there, and everyone is just hoping for interstate travel to be reopened so that we can allow a little bit more flexibility. And the current allowance to allow travel from green to green, we have also put in a proposal to, let's say, allow people to use flights, for example. There's no risk of getting out in the middle of the flight into a red zone. You cannot go between one point to the other. And also by their own vehicles, hotels can play their role. If let's say the hotels were to set the time that you must check in with your MySejahtera at the hotel, then there's no risk of them deviating on their tour. So there are things that we can work together. I think the key point there also, we must work together to make it work.
Right.
Yeah. Look, I have to agree with both Yap and Dato' here. Domestic tourism is actually a good way to jumpstart or kickstart, the tourism industry, and not just that, all the other related industries that are, that are involved, retail, F&B, etc., etc., etc. But again, we have to realize that tourism is more than just promoting a stay or promoting a destination or an attraction. It's really got to do with people movement. Now, the way we see it in Amata is there has been progress where the ministry has taken steps, or the government has taken steps to gradually open up borders. But of course, as my two colleagues here have said, it would be best, of course, that the government will eventually be able to allow much more freer travel in between states. And look, that being said, where do the bulk of the tourists come from? They're all in the Klang Valley. So until and unless we can open up those restrictions, domestic tourism will not see the intended effect until we do so.
Right. But at the same time, people are still quite fearful, even if it's staycations, right? There is still that fear, especially with the numbers at the moment, right? So it may take months or years for the tourism industry to recover, and we need all the help we can get from all the parties to rebuild. So what are the plans from Tourism Malaysia to work with industry partners to draw future travelers to choose Malaysia as a travel destination after dust settles and one day the international borders are open again?
One fine day.
Dato', perhaps?
Okay, as far as tourism Malaysia, and as agency under the Ministry of Tourism and Culture, we through the initiative given by the government under PRE 1.0, for example, that the government had offered the travel vouchers, discount as cash rebate to the benefit of tourism consumer to travel under the tourism recovery plan.
Right.
And also, we also have launched the Jom Drive campaign that we hope that allowing the participant to enjoy the attractive discount, the entry fee for example, like to the Zoo Negara, stay in hotel and shop, that we are continue promoting that. We hope that we will be help and encourage Malaysian, especially to travel domestically. And also, we work closely with Malaysian Association of Hotel, with Malaysian Budget Hotel, with the homestay for them to continuously offer the attractive packages and option for them to enjoy their holiday. And similar to that, we are also working with MICEP, Malaysian Convention Incentive, to allow the certain numbers of the convention or incentive activities in the hotel, with the strict SOPs. And we can see that the thing that we are happy to see that almost all industry players, either from the hotel, from the tour operator, and from the product owner, everybody are working together and seriously are looking the SOPs to ensure that the safety of the visitors are being taken care. And as far as tourism is concerned, we are trying to balance it between the economic and health.
Right.
Okay. Despite we want, of course, everybody wants the border to be open and interstate to be allowed, but the due consideration have to really look into it. And as long as we are together in the follow the SOP, I believe that there is a light of the tourism, especially on the domestic tourism.
So as you were talking about domestic tourism, right, it's going to play an important role in recovery.
Yeah.
So, what are the plans from Tourism Malaysia to ensure that domestic travel can continue with strict SOPs? And what are some of the things that we're looking at? I know, like, if things improve one day, like travel bubbles and things like that as well.
As I did mention earlier just now, that both within to encourage the activities is need both the supply and demand. And this need to be together. The operator, and that means the hospitality industry player have to be get ready and to ensure that the visitors, the domestic tourists, to follow the SOP, and that will be hope slowly when I believe, as far as government is concerned, when there is no case, there will be no restriction of people to travel, especially on the within the state and intrastate.
Right. Are you guys also looking at things or ways to encourage domestic tourism? I know you were saying that it is easy in the Klang Valley because we've got the volume, right?
But then again, that's quite a tricky situation as well. If we are doing well in the Klang Valley now, when interstate travel is restricted, what happens when it's open?
Right.
So people go out of Klang Valley, and then again the stakeholders in the Klang Valley itself will lose out in that sense. So we need to balance up the entire thing. I think as what Dato has mentioned earlier as well, we ran a couple of initiatives, and part of it is part of the economic stimulus plan that was announced last year.
Okay.
We're still in that process of dishing out the subsidies for the domestic local people to buy the hotel packages and deals.
Right.
And that's 100 ringgit for the 4 and 5-star hotel, and then 3-star hotel and below you get a 50 ringgit subsidy with it. That is still ongoing, but we ran into a roadblock because of the MCO and the interstate travel restrictions. People are not buying because they are worried that if they purchase it and they cannot utilize it, their money will go to waste. But again, on the government side, even before we fully utilize that allocation, another allocation is already ready for us to take up for the next phase. Tourism Malaysia and MOTAC has already allocated that for this year and the second phase of stimulus for the entire tourism industry for domestic market. I think we look forward to all the initiatives to work together with Tourism Malaysia.
I think the other thing to note, Frida, is that you mentioned something about, whether industry players are actually following the SOPs and how we can use that to promote domestic tourism. Of course, it works both ways. It works, for domestic tourism as well as inbound tourism and even outbound. Let's be fair. Right. Travel is both ways, right? The key thing here is that it's not a very complex process. I mean, I know for a fact that and Mata, we've already engaged, our own program, initiated our own program to ensure that all our industry players, our members, actually comply with very strict SOPs. The beauty of it is the SOPs aren't very different from what every Malaysian is already used to and what everybody else in the world is used to, right? So on that note, travel on any level should not be an issue at all. It's basically just going to be a small issue of adjusting the restrictions, and like Yap says, balancing out how we're going to manage that dispersion of tourists, domestic or otherwise, in the country.
So what is the balance?
Well,
I mean, from Martha's point of view and from MAH point of view, right? What do you think should be the balance where you could ease off a little bit of the travel restrictions, but at the same time do not compromise on the health part of it?
Okay, look, the government has done the necessary up to this stage by not enforcing blanket-wide restrictions, right? So that's definitely a positive move. Now, based on the data they're now collecting, and Mata has long said, we need to take an analytical approach, to this. And what we think the government should be doing, if they are not already, is probably assessing the next stage of risk, right? Yes. Based on the fact that they're rolling out the vaccines, people are more aware, education is ongoing, economic needs need to be satisfied, right? They should take this a little step further and start narrowing, the requirements for imposing these restrictions. And again, things like the green zone travel bubbles may be one way to go.
I think the other balance that we look at is how the business entities, the hotels or the travel agencies, would limit their capacity, limit how much revenue they can make from their properties or their products at the moment, to deliver assurance in terms of safety and health. Hotels can limit the occupancy up to 50% so that you do not have too many people in the hotel at the same time. And restaurants are already limiting the capacity in terms of seating. And convention centers, we are already limiting the number of people we can have in every single event. So that's the balance that we are already doing at the moment to ensure lives and livelihoods is building balance.
Well, I have an interesting question, Frida. We are also focused about SOPs and of course health. I mean, these are all very important things. But do not forget, are we forgetting the fact that hospitality and tourism boils down to service as well?
Exactly.
So are we also focused about getting SOPs in place, making sure the health requirements are there, that everyone just tends to forget about, what customer service is. So, would we then end up being a nation or, a country where we compromise so much in terms of service excellence?
Well, that's one thing. If you all can comment, because it kind of leads to my next question about how, the hardest hit, right? This space, this travel and hospitality, and over 30,000 employees have lost their jobs last year. Hundreds of hotels and resorts have shut down since last year. And the continuing closure of international borders, more will cease operations in the coming months. It's very disheartening to hear. And the same goes to travel agencies and tour operators, right? And this is a harsh reality. So what is your take on the ongoing interstate travel ban, and what needs to be done to save jobs in our country's tourism industry, technology or what have you? Silence. No answer.
No, I think since the pandemic last year and MCO started on 18th of March last year, we went through a series of engagement and consultation with the various ministries of the government, looking up ways of how we can retain our people, how we can protect jobs. That was the main objective that we wanted. We want to keep our people. We don't want to let them go. We don't want to lose our talents in that sense. And there's a proven model in many other countries. That's a subsidy model, subsidy on wages and also subsidy on the businesses that are not allowed to open.
Right.
But let's not compare government to government.
Right.
Things needs to be done based on what the government is capable of or what the government can afford to do. At the moment, thank you to the government, they acknowledge our needs. Tourism is always the one having the subsidy extended 3 months after 3 months. At the moment, the wage subsidy for the tourism industry has been extended up to June under the latest Permakasa and all the initiatives from the government. So that is needed, but we always say that's not enough. Of course, everyone will always complain, nothing is ever enough, right? Everything is always, you need more, you want more. But the truth is 600 ringgit per person per month is not enough. 600 ringgit is not enough for us to
Keep all the
cover.
jobs.
Yeah, no way.
Okay.
Look, besides manpower, which is very key, the one fear that most of us have is that by the time we're ready to reopen our borders, what's happened to the people we've retrenched or who have left or have gone into other fields? We've lost that very, very specific talent base, that makes up what our brand of tourism is for Malaysia. So that's one major worry. I think the other thing that we need to look seriously into, though, is the adoption of technology. So Malaysia has been a very, I would say up to this point, a very traditional tourism country. We've always talked about promoting our country in the same fashion. It's nature, outdoors. We've got plenty of attractions, right? But the one thing that we're missing, though, and that the government really needs to push is adoption of technology. And it encompasses things that go beyond just marketing and promotions. It looks at our infrastructure. Are our industry players integrated in a sense? Is our economy integrated? Is it easy for us to get those facilities that we need and to reach the markets that we need to reach? So I think that's also the other thing we need to look at.
Okay, you brought up a point about you don't want to compare governments to governments, but what are some countries that have taken that stance, and what are you seeing in those countries?
Are we allowed to name the governments?
Which have done well? I think we should.
No, I think Singapore did really well in terms of managing the tourism industry, because tourism is a very, as the minister said it himself, tourism is a core economic pillar of the country.
Right.
That's important that they acknowledge the importance of tourism. And they had a plan that is being rolled out over 2 years, since last year until now, until the end of the year. Different stages of different types of subsidy, different percentage of subsidy based on different industry, different businesses within that industry. Is a very detailed plan to help the industry sustain and survive. I think that's something that we need. Now we're just looking at 3 months and then 3 months, another 3 months maybe. So how do I tell the hotel owners or the operators what's going to happen 3 months later? They need to decide now whether they need to take drastic action now or they need to decide again later. So we cannot be looking at such important decisions on the 3 months basis and the MCO on the 2 weeks basis.
It's a very, stop, go kind of thing. It's very difficult to manage the operations. But very interesting, you talk about technology. Like for me personally, I've been going on virtual tours of other countries, right? And like the moment the borders are open, I want to physically go there, right? Now, many hotels nationwide enjoy higher occupancy rates between June and September after RMCO was imposed nationwide and interstate travel was permitted. I was definitely one of them. Should there be a lift of interstate travel ban as soon as possible? And what are the strategies we should have in place with regards to travel bubbles and the vaccine?
Okay, I would just like to add one point to that. We had high occupancy between June to September last year before the third wave came. And there were no clusters from that particular period.
Right.
We must establish and acknowledge that the tourism industry did not cause any outbreak of COVID-19 at that time.
Okay.
And interstate travel or tourism is not a cause of concern when it comes to spreading COVID-19. That just proves to say that the industries are complying to the SOPs. They're doing a good job in ensuring that safety and health of the tourists are being taken care of. So that's important to acknowledge first. And moving forward, I think what we need to look at is how we can comply to the SOPs and yet provide similar or equivalent type of satisfaction to our guests. And we can do that. We are confident we can do that. As what Nigel has mentioned earlier, we have our certification in place. We did it on our own. It is an entirely industry initiative to do the certification. We have the Clean and Safe Malaysia for the hotels, and Mata has their Travel Safe, and now the convention guys are doing one for themselves as well. So we want to assure tourists and guests that we comply. And don't worry about the check and balance. We have a third party, an independent assessor to come in to ensure that we comply with it. So that's our way of telling people it's safe to travel.
Right. Yeah, very interesting point to note, right? During that period, nothing happened within the travel industry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Dato', what are your
Yeah.
thoughts about that?
That's what I mentioned earlier, that we are thankful to all the industry players who are follow and work together with Ministry and the Tourism Malaysia in ensuring that their property are being sanitized and follow the SOPs. And of course, as you did mention just now, it's a two, hospitality and SOPs is come together. And being the hospitality country, we do not also, I believe the industry player do not leave the hospitality and services in regard of SOPs. It must come together. That's a difference of our tourism industry compared with others. We try to, again, we balance it between the safety and the services that they are rendered.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just one example, one international hotel chain has, since early last year, early in the pandemic, they've issued a new guidebook for their employees, how to smile with a mask on.
Okay.
It's illustrated in the book itself,
Right.
how you look like when you smile, how do your eyes look like,
Right.
and that's how the industry has adopted
Right.
new norms to the hospitality industry.
I was thinking we just print smileys.
So, but just an interesting point, we were talking about employees earlier on about how when we get back into gear again, and then all the employees that we've lost, right? And it's got to be a catch-22 situation as well. I'm just thinking right now, do you think it'd be fair with a bit of planning? Like say, working with relevant authorities, say if 30% of the population has been vaccinated, can we at least begin interstate travel again, if we were to put a number, and then that way industries can plan, and there's a greater sense of agency to get those numbers at least, and then we're sort of working towards a plan, towards a deadline, say 30%, we're ready to roll again. Would that be something to work towards? I'm putting 30%.
Look, I would take that one step further.
Right.
Right.
Why even
We'll take that one step further. If of course we would hope that as many people get vaccinated as quickly as possible. That bodes well for everyone across the board. But I think what we also need to look at is how we classify our tourism players. We are essentially frontliners, right? And the last thing we would want, even though it may not be the fault of the people that we work with, is for someone to infect another through the activity of tourism, nothing to do with us, right? And then have the newspapers splash something across and say, hey, tourism is the major cause of the spread of the COVID-19, which is not true. So the other thing which we do need to look at is a program that will allow our frontliners, the people who are going to be touch points, the one handling the guests, the tourists, to be given a priority, all right? Or maybe a little bit higher up the list to get vaccinated, ahead of others as well. Because again, we will be taking care of them. We will be their first point of contact, and probably, for most, if not the full part of the journey.
Okay.
What do you think?
It is not for us to say 30%.
Okay.
Allowing
But I mean, if we were to say we were to work on something.
It depends on how the program has been, Nigel mentioned just now. Who give it 30%? Who's the component of the population who get vaccinated? And you see now is in our program that the first group who vaccinated is frontliners, people who work in the hospital, in the security and so forth. And the second one, the priority is to the senior citizen. So it even though it's 30%, which component of the population, which group of population who are vaccinated. So I would like to defer that if 30% are vaccinated, that will be allowed to be interstate travel freely, unless the cases are much reduced.
Right.
I think that percentage means nothing. 30% means what? If the entire population of Klang Valley is vaccinated, that's 30% or what? Yeah. Whether they can travel or not, it's not based on the percentage. I would just not put a percentage on it and say, why not just allow anyone and everyone who has been vaccinated to travel?
Yeah.
Right.
That's an easier way to approach things.
Yeah, it's really about how fast and quickly and efficiently we can roll out the vaccination program. Faster, better.
Okay, so and I know this is a question, right? How do you plan in a VUCA state, they call it, right? What volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and we're all learning. And every country obviously is different. Every government is run differently. But are we taking a lead from other countries? You mentioned a little bit about what Singapore is doing, but Singapore is very dependent on the conferences and tourism and all that. But are we hearing from other places where we can learn something?
Okay, on that note, I'm going to sort of build on what Yap said earlier on. It's like you said, it's a very difficult situation to say, hey, we're definitely going to do this, or we're definitely going to open up borders, hence, and this is, these are the people we're going to be inviting. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to give any sort of certainty to the situation. But what is possible, though, is setting a forward plan in motion.
Right.
For example, the reason why, in our eyes, that Singapore and some of these other countries have done well, even though their borders still remain closed, is that they've actually managed to project a vision or an objective for that particular industry to say, look, by this time, we're going to be able to do this. Now, this is what we normally say, aim high, all right? And along the way, you're going to be able to achieve certain steps, right? So, if we're not able to really open borders fully by the end of the year, it doesn't really matter. But along the way, we say, look, we intend or we aim to open our borders by the end of 2021.
Right.
And along the way, we've got these different milestones. These are the things we're setting in place. These are the markets we're opening up. These are the negotiations we're having G to G. Now, what this does is it not only gives the industry a benchmark or a milestone to plan for resumption of operations, it gives the industry a chance to plan where they're going to spend their marketing dollars, how they're going to start working with their contractors forward, maybe in 2022, right? And more importantly, it's going to give hope to the industry. And that's something that we can't discount. Where there's hope, there's going to be initiative, there's going to be movement, there's going to be impetus. So that's what we need. We need a roadmap.
Okay. So I've asked all the questions, but I just want to know, like, what's happening, with the Malaysian Association of Hotels and with MATA. What are the conversations you're having with your members right now? What seems to be their most immediate concern right now?
To us will be vaccination, because I think earlier in March, we submitted a list of employees to be vaccinated to the Ministry of Tourism, and Ministry of Tourism coordinated that with the Ministry of Health. Apparently, the ministry is actually considering allowing frontliners of the hotels to be vaccinated first in the second phase of the vaccination program. And most of the hotels at the moment, they are talking about this. They want their employees to be vaccinated. And that jives into what Nigel has mentioned earlier. We need to be prepared for the market when it comes back. We need to tell people that our employees are vaccinated, it's safe to stay with us. That's something we want to look forward to. I think over the last year, I think more than enough of complaining and anything else about how bad is the situation. Let's forget about that. Let's move forward.
Yes. Yeah.
What do we want to see in the next 3 months, next 6 months? What Nigel brought up is true. We have already received interest from overseas countries. They say, what are your contract rates for year 2022 and 2023 onwards? They want to secure it now because they know the demand is there. They know there's a lot of pent-up demand. People want to travel. So that's what we are talking about now.
Right. So getting the employees vaccinated. What about MATA?
Okay, so our conversation is a little bit different. Travel agents generally take care of almost all aspects of the travel journey, right, of a traveler. So everything from their logistics, their accommodation, and the itinerary, and sometimes even their F&B and other related needs, right? So this period has actually exposed a major weakness in our system. And even though this has caused a lot of hardship for the industry, we're hoping that the government will be able to modernize, what we see as a very old and very irrelevant, probably not irrelevant, but very old and maybe outdated act. Now, let me just give you a rough idea of what this means. When the COVID-19 hit, industry players were faced with mass cancellations. And unfortunately, the laws that we had did not really protect the industry players from the consumers. Now, not that the industry players did anything wrong, right? COVID-19 happened, there were cancellations, people's money had already been spent on services, pre-booked. That's what agents normally do. And we just couldn't get that money back. As much as we wanted to help the consumer, there was just no way we could do it. Once you pay for an air ticket, the airlines are not going to refund it, or they're going to take a really long time. They've got their own concerns, right? So a lot of these major flaws in the Act were exposed, and this really compounded the issue. Now, the good thing is we've been in touch with the ministry, and they have assured us that they're actively looking into modernizing parts of this Act. And I think, just to answer your question, Frida, the conversation now we are having in the industry is actually a forward-looking conversation. Are these things and these platforms, this infrastructure, is it going to be in place when we reopen borders? And the major concern is this: despite everything that we have, these old laws actually do cause our industry to actually be less competitive than our neighbors. So we're actually very hopeful that if these things get corrected within this period, that by the time 2022 hits, we'll be ready to go.
Yeah, just very interesting that you talk about, getting ready for 2022, right? So my last question for Dato. So how do we prepare, like what is Tourism Malaysia doing in terms of getting, promoting our tourism virtually? Like, Frida was just saying she was visiting
Virtual tours.
Virtual tours, right? Are we preparing ourselves for that, Dato?
Yes, we do. Within, of course, with or without this pandemic, we have to, Tourism Malaysia always look for option of being creative in promoting the countries in our way of means that, of course, the digital and virtual is one of the option which we are really seriously look into it now. And again, to sum up that our discussion today, for the period of time, domestic tourism is become our pillar for to sustain our tourism industry in the country for the time being. And when we talk about the travel bubble, of course, we are keep talking, we are communicating with our counterparts, and I would believe that through National Security Council and our foreign ministry are working up with the counterpart to allow the travel bubble. However, travel bubble needs to be reciprocal, both. We want them, they want us. That is the basic principle of allowing the border to be open.
Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Put more budget in for next year.
So what's our budget? Jennifer, anything to add?
No,
And of course, when once the border is open, we are ready to go.
Yes, ready
Okay?
to very
And I believe that
ready
the
and very
industry also,
Yes.
and we are taking opportunity as the new term that we are using now is revenge tourism. And we
Revenge
hope
tourism.
that Malaysia become one of the destination that
for revenge tourism.
getting benefit from the revenge tourism after people for so long cannot be travel.
Well, all we can say here is that may revenge tourism be vicious.
All right. On that note, thank you very much, gentlemen, and of
you.
course, Jennifer. We've come to the end of our Tourism Malaysia Industry Leaders segment. I would like to thank our speakers, YB Dato Zainuddin, Mr. Yap Lip Singh, and Mr. Nigel Wong. Thank you for sharing your insights with us on Hospitality Asia channel. Look out for our next session on the airlines and travel segment. Stay tuned.